Howdy, Cassandra here. Now, the last time I restored a game, I did kind of a photo montage of the restoration process. And this was for an Outrun Cabaret, and I got a lot of questions and a lot of nice comments about it, but I decided with this restoration I was going to do something a little different and do not quite a step-by-step process, of more of a weekly recap of what I've done or what I'm doing to complete the process. So we'll call this video Donkey Kong Jr. Restoration Part 1. And we just bought this game. This is a Donkey Kong Jr. cabinet, obviously, that has been converted twice now in its lifetime. Originally, it came from the factory, from Nintendo, as a Donkey Kong Jr. and it sat on location. Though probably about 84, 85, 86, it was converted with a factory kit from Nintendo to what's called a Versus system. Now, I'm not quite sure what game it was when it was a Versus system. It could have been a lot of games. It could have been a Hogan's Alley. It could have been a Super Mario Brothers. There were quite a few games available for that particular system. It could have even been a couple of those games in its lifetime. At some point in the early 90s, someone had converted it into a Final Fight, and then I purchased it from a gentleman in Olympia, Washington, who had purchased it quite a while ago to use in a game room that just never happened in his home, and it had been sitting in his garage. Functional, but far from its original state. So we're going to bring it back and do what's called deconverting and convert it back to what it originally was, which was the Donkey Kong Jr., classic arcade game that most people love and cherish. So we're going to do it step by step, and instead of having just some monotonous video of me soldering for 8 hours, I'm going to do it in chunks and just kind of show you what I've done. So this is what I've done for this first week on restoring the Donkey Kong Jr. So check it out. Okay, so let's jump in here and look at the monitor. This monitor is a Sanyo 20 EZV, and very typical of Nintendo games. They usually always have these Sanyo monitors in them. This is kind of the second generation of these monitors, and this is not the original monitor of this game. And how I can tell that is very simply just by disregarding the model number on the monitor, looking at the burn-in of the monitor, and the monitor burn-in is definitely that of the upper monitor of Nintendo's Punch-Out. So at some point the original monitor must have died, or the operator decided that it wasn't worth fixing and switched out with a Punch-Out monitor. So what I've started doing here, because the monitor is not giving me any sense of green, I've started recapping with the caps that I did have. I didn't have any of the larger ones, so those are coming. I'm going to replace this flyback, and now those of you who may not know, who have never worked on monitors, you have to be very, very careful with this flyback, because there's a lot of electricity going through this thing, and it has this little suction cup that goes in the monitor. You really don't want to mess with that unless you know what you're doing, and in future videos we're going to change this flyback, and I'll go through it step by step and kind of show you how not to murder yourself. Okay, because I'm a weirdo, I usually like to write down kind of my laundry list and go through the game as I restore it. It helps me keep organized, and especially if problems arise. And right now we're dealing with the green drive, which is not working. So this is according to these diagnostic materials I downloaded. These are the old Nintendo documents from the early 80s. This is kind of the hierarchy of the green drive. We have some diodes and some transistor numbers. This is the location number and ID number that's on the board, so I know where they are. But the first thing I wanted to check was something we call the B+ voltage. Now, the B+ voltage, according to this, focus in there, should be between 110 and 130 volts. Now, when I went and checked it, and you can go online and see all sorts of videos. In fact, Todd Tuckey from TNT Amusements has a really good video how to check the B+ voltage. It was pretty low, so I was hoping that would jumpstart the green a little bit. So I adjusted it, and the monitor looked a lot better, but still no sense of green. But unfortunately, if we can get in here, what happened was see it or not. My finger's in the way. The little turning wheel broke, and so now the monitor won't work at all. And these little finger wheels, or whatever you want to call them, to adjust, there's a whole bunch here. You know, over here, these are a little different, but these kind of things are notoriously easily broken on Nintendo monitors, so you have to be very cautious. But I have one on order, and the larger caps. So what we'll do is we're going to recap the larger caps, put a new flyback on, and change that turning wheel and see if we can get green. And at that point, if we still don't see green, we're going to have to dive in a little deeper with some of these part numbers. So that's where we are with the monitor. Okay, so let's talk about the cabinet. Now, if you watched my previous video about my projects for summer, the cabinet is in surprisingly good, structurally good condition. What I've done is I've started stripping the paint slowly but surely and taking off the old decals that were the old Versus decals for its first conversion from a Donkey Kong to a Nintendo Universus system. And what we have here is this beautiful orange laminate, which is mostly intact, which makes me very excited, since paint, you can repaint these things orange, and you can even get the paint to match, but it's not quite the same luster as a laminate. Now, there are a couple of issues. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, because probably from this it looks pretty darn good, but there are some real finite scratches here. And this is not from the decal or me taking off the decal. This is actually above the area where the decal was. I have a feeling that may have been from either something rubbing up against the game or from some bozo sticking a sign over top of it and scratching or clawing up some sort of tape that was not the best tape. We also have some like little dings from just wear and tear. And you can see on the front, which I've started to successfully strip off with just a little bit of stripper, just a tiny bit at a time. I even like to water it down a tiny bit and just make little circles. Slow and steady wins the race with this stuff. But also you have a little damage that was underneath the paint. Just maybe the reason they painted to begin with. There's a little Bondo work right here. So all that will be fixed and touched up. What I like to do in these kind of situations is I will get paint to match, fill in what I can, and then use a wet sanding technique to retain the gloss. And usually it's a pretty good match and pretty close. As you can see here too, I've got my Junior control panel on there, even though it doesn't really do anything other than making me happy because it's starting to look like a Junior. In here we have the original lower bracket that was part of the game. These side brackets that were intended for the game to be horizontal, the monitor put in the horizontal compared to the original vertical monitor. But what I'm missing here is there should be a bar up here. So the monitor will support vertically on the top, and then on the original bottom one, I have this coming. I've already taken one side off of here. This will be going momentarily. And so then we can actually orient the monitor the way it's supposed to orient. It's the original light fixture. The starter was dead, the light was dead, the fluorescent bulb was dead. I cleaned it up the best I could. I have both those parts on the way. I usually have pretty good luck getting these older fluorescent fixtures to work. A lot of people like to replace these with LED fixtures. I don't. I like the original fluorescent kind of glow, even though these bulbs are getting kind of harder to find. So I like it to be as authentic as possible. Okay, so on the other side, obviously I haven't started stripping off this sticker yet. My fingers are pretty sore from finishing the other one yesterday, so probably wait a day or two and get started on this side. You'll notice, this is kind of interesting, there's a little bit of paint here. This paint should come off pretty easily. It's just real flat. It almost comes off with your fingers. It's so small as far as, or thin I should say, as far as the paint goes. The other interesting thing that I think is funny is there's actually some of the Donkey Kong Jr. artwork underneath these bolts. These bolts hold on to those rails that are inside the monitor bay that held the monitor horizontally. So these will all come out when we take that bracket out, and I'll fill these because they're not necessary anymore once we put the monitor back as a vertical monitor, and the bolts will be here when we get that arm, or hopefully may come today. We'll have to see. Inside the back of the cabinet, I've done some general cleanup, so it's not quite as filthy as it was. I still have the original, or not the original, but what was in here, the Final Fight board, which will be coming out today. I've sold it online, so I like doing those kind of things because I have no intention to ever play Final Fight, so I might as well recoup some of the cost of buying the game. I need to get in here and vacuum it a little bit and clean it up. I'll probably keep the switching power supply. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. You know, having a reliable power supply, even in a vintage game, is preferred. A lot of the older power supplies are not the greatest, although I guess the purists out there like to restore those too, but I don't bother so much with the power supplies. So what else do I have? So I've got my 2 Donkey Kong Jr. original CPUs that are complete, and I have no idea if these work or not, so that will be a surprise for next week. I'm going to rewire the game for the original harness, or I might keep it JAMA and just get an adapter for these boards. I haven't decided yet. There is some viability to keeping it JAMA if I decide I want to have a switcher from the original hardware to maybe a multi-board, which I know is not super correct, and I hate doing that. I don't have any multi-games in my collection. I have a couple games. Well, I shouldn't say that because I have a multi-Williams. But, you know, obviously a game like this that has been brought back from the dead, I don't feel too bad with taking some liberties. It will look authentic. It will play authentic. You know, I have access to the original hardware if I so desire it to be perfect. But, you know, people come over and they may want to play more than one Donkey Kong game, and since I don't have the space to have all the Donkey Kong games, it would be nice to have Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 3, maybe a couple others in the same cabinet, with having the option to still have the authentic hardware if I desire to. So, but we'll see. So next week we should have some more headway on the monitor. The cabinet should be totally cleaned up by then, and we may even have a somewhat working game, but we're going to have to address some of the problems with the control panel and also clean up the rest of the cabinet. So that's where we are on week 1 of the Donkey Kong Jr. restoration. Thanks for watching, and if you have any problems or questions or comments, just give me a holler. You can comment directly on my website, or you can send it to me through YouTube. You know, I don't know, just be careful, and like I always tell people, whenever you're doing these kind of things, remember that you're dealing with a lot of electricity, and electricity will kill you, so you have to respect it, and be cautious. It's when people are careless that accidents happen, and you don't want to hurt yourself, and don't be afraid to make a mistake or two. That's the only way you're going to learn, and have a great day. Bye!